Okay, this is Chapter 14, the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is a system that can be quite complicated, but we are going to really summarize it. We're going to keep it very brief, so this will be a very short chapter. Okay, so let's get started with what the components of the lymphatic system, what makes up the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is going to be made up of a clear fluid that's called lymph. This is the fluid that enters the lymphatic capillaries. It's going to be mainly composed of water and some solutes, some things dissolved in it. It's basically fluid that leaves the cells and gets trapped in what we call the interstitial spaces, which is the space between the tissue cells. Okay, so that's what lymph is. Lymphocytes is the white blood cells. It's the same thing that we talked about back in the blood chapter, lymphocytes. And then you have the lymphatic vessels, which is the vessels that is going to be carrying the lymph. The lymph nodes, which filter the lymph. And then you have immune response organs like the tonsils, the spleen, and the thymus gland are all part of the lymphatic system. Okay, so the lymphatic system right here is shown as green. Okay, the lymph fluid is not green. Okay, they have colored it green so that you can tell the difference between a lymphatic vessel and a blood vessel, because blood vessels are red or blue depending on whether they're oxygenated or deoxygenated. But lymph vessels, they color it green so that you realize that it's not a blood vessel. But keep in mind, it's not a green color, it is clear. And let me get a pen going here. Okay, so this is just showing you all the blood vessels right here and the major lymphatic organs, the thymus, the spleen, lacteals located in the small intestines, and then you've got all these lymph nodes, these little nodule things on this illustration is the lymph nodes. Okay, so the functions of the lymphatic system, there's three major functions. First of all, fluid balance is a function. Every day about 3 liters of interstitial fluid has to be returned to the blood. So every day about 3 liters of fluid leaves the cells and gets trapped between the cells. Interstitial means between the cells. Okay, so fluid leaves the cells and gets trapped in between them. If it didn't get put back into the blood, it would build up and your tissues would swell. Okay, so your fluid balance is part of the lymphatic system's function. It takes that fluid that's trapped between the cells and puts it back into the blood so that it doesn't build up in the tissues. Another function of the lymphatic system is fat absorption. The lymphatic system has special lymphatic vessels that are located in the small intestines called lacteals. Okay, they're called lacteals because lact meaning milk, and they don't really have anything to do with milk. They're called lacteals because they're little white vesicles in the small intestines, and they look like they're filled with milk, so that's where the name came from. And then you have the last function is defense. Our lymphatic system is part of our immune system. It carries out our immune responses to fight off infection and help to keep us healthy. Okay, so the lymphatic capillaries and vessels are going to carry the fluid in a one-way direction. Again, it's one way, just like the blood. It is always going to be leaving from the tissues and being brought back into the circulatory system, so it's being put back into the blood. Okay, this is going to be done by lymphatic capillaries and lymphatic vessels. The lymphatic capillaries are going to be tiny closed-ended vessels. It consists of simple squamous epithelium. The fluid moves into them very easily, and once it moves into them, they get trapped inside the vessel and they have to go forward, which puts them into the blood. They can't back out and go back into the tissues again, so they can only be forward and put back into the circulatory system. They're going to be found in most of the tissues because most of the tissues can build up this interstitial fluid. And they join to form, the lymphatic capillaries join to form the lymphatic vessels, and the lymphatic vessels is what dumps the lymph back into the circulatory system. So the lymphatic vessels are going to resemble small veins. They're where the lymphatic capillaries join to become larger vessels, and they have one-way valves. So again, the fluid's only moving forward. It's not going to back up and go backwards. It's always moving forward. Okay, this right here is an illustration that shows you these lymphatic capillaries. Okay, the red and the blue is representing the blood vessels, and these right here is the small vessels between them, the capillaries, and these are the tissue cells. Okay, so in between all of these tissue cells, you have the capillaries bringing the blood, and then you also have the lymphatic capillaries, which is the green vessel here. The green vessel, you can see it pushes its way in between all of these tissue cells, and then if you look at this more closely, you can see how it's made up of. This is the simple squamous epithelium right here, and the simple squamous epithelium overlaps each other like this. Okay, so the fluid is, you have all the tissue cells right here, and the fluid is building up between them, so that fluid can seep into this through here. This little flap can open up, the fluid moves in, and when the fluid moves into here, the fluid builds up here. When the fluid builds up, let me erase what I just drew. When the fluid builds up, that you now have pressure inside of it. You now have the pressure inside of it, so the pressure pushes up against this little flap and closes it, so that the fluid moves in, the pressure builds up, pushes against it, and so the fluid is trapped in here. It can't get out again. So once it's trapped in here, it has no choice but to move out of the blood vessel. So it moves forward until it gets, it moves through the capillary, merges with the lymphatic vessel, and the lymphatic vessel brings it back to the circulatory system. Okay, the right lymphatic duct is where the lymphatic vessels from all the right upper limb, the right part of the head, the neck, the chest are going to empty. Okay, they empty into the right subclavian vein, and this right subclavian vein is going to dump into the superior vena cava, which brings the blood back to the heart. Okay, then you have the thoracic duct, and the thoracic duct is where the rest of the body is going to empty into the lymphatic vessels. And this one is going to empty into the left subclavian vein. So if you look at this picture right here, it's much easier to comprehend all of this. In this illustration over here on the side, all this part of the body, the right upper quadrant of the body, that all drains into the right lymphatic duct. Then everything else drains into the thoracic duct. Okay, so if you just look at this picture, it makes it easier to remember what drains where. Just this 1/4 of the body drains into the right lymphatic duct. Everything else drains into the thoracic duct. Okay, the lymphatic nodes, they're rounded structures. They vary in size. They're located near the lymphatic vessels. They are very numerous in the neck, the armpit, and the groin. And the lymph is going to be passing through the lymph nodes before it enters into the blood. And the lymph nodes are going to filter the lymph before it gets put back into the blood. Okay, so as the lymph passes through these lymph nodes, it gets filtered. The microorganisms, if they're found in them, they can activate an immune response. The immune response is activated by stimulating the lymphocytes to divide. Remember, lymphocytes was that white blood cell. Okay, so if microorganisms or bacteria or infectious microbes are found in the lymph, then it's going to activate these lymphocytes to kick in the immune response from the white blood cells. Okay, the microorganisms can also be removed from the lymph by the macrophages. Remember, the macrophages are the large, macro means large, phage means eater. So macrophages is the large eater cells, those monocytes that have enlarged. So that's the monocytes that have enlarged. Okay, and again, that's part of our immune response. So it's going to try to kill off these microorganisms before they get a chance to make us sick. Okay, this right here is a picture of a lymph node, and it shows you right here the lymphatic vessels that are dumping the lymph into them, and then it passes through the lymph node and it gets filtered, and all these the immune response can happen if there's microorganisms in it, and then it leaves the lymph node and continues through the lymphatic vessel. And that is it. That's all for this chapter. Okay, so like I said, we're going to keep it short and simple for the lymphatic system. If you have any questions about it, you can send me an email or see me in class.